Welcome back to the What's Next podcast, coming to you from beautiful Monterey, California. I was just out goofing around today, driving my convertible around up and down the coast. Oh man, it's so beautiful out here. I came out here 10 years ago and I started this little massage place, and I run into the most interesting people. I had to start this podcast because I run into everybody from authors to Hollywood people to mostly around here it's military, and just people from all different walks in the military, whether they're just beginning their career or whether they're just getting ready to retire. Speaking of which, we got Mr. Jim Howard with us today. He's put decades into the U.S. Army.
Long decades.
Still three.
Yeah,
mercy, and not done yet.
Well, I did three decades, so a total of 30 years with the Army, and then retired on a Friday, and 2 days later went to work for the Navy as a civilian.
Oh, I see. Okay. Tell me more about that.
I went to work at the Naval Postgraduate School here in Monterey. I've been there for 13 years now, and I have 2 years, 3 months, and 6 days until I retire from that. Not that I'm counting, but I just happen to know that that's how long I have.
Yep.
For my second and final retirement.
Yeah, right. I see you got a beautiful truck. You're getting ready to pull a beautiful camper around. You got plans, but it's just not quite ready to...
It's a process.
Pull the trigger.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. Take it easy, take it slow.
Yeah, the truck is my toy.
Yeah.
My family, wife, children, sister, all refer to me as a 60-year-old just reaching puberty.
Need a big truck.
Me and big truck, yes. The nice thing is I'm well enough along in my career and finances that I can do something about it now.
I can have a big truck.
I can have the big truck and put all the toys on it I want.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about it not too long ago. You going to end up going with that dually?
I don't think I'm going to do a dually.
No.
So the first reason is dualies are significantly more expensive.
Okay.
The second is the only reason I think I would need a dually is to pull a really, really large fifth wheel. And I don't think we're going to go that large at this point.
See.
We're reevaluating our needs and our priorities. So we may just stick with the travel trailer that we have now. In which case, this truck is plenty. When I tow the trailer now, I still get 12 miles per gallon.
Yeah,
which
whether
is
you're going
great.
uphill or downhill.
Yeah, the truck doesn't know the trailer's even back
there. Doesn't even know.
I have to look back once in a while in the rearview mirror and make sure it's still there.
I like the single wheel better. I always think the dualies are kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of buddies just love them. It's like, I don't know, it just seems in the way. Every time you see one that's got dents in the side of the, just, I forgot about those.
I had a dually once.
Did you?
And we had a little incident in a parking lot where the extra width of the dually was forgotten about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and caught the back end of a Cadillac in the parking lot.
Oh.
Yeah, so we don't want to do that again.
No, let's not do that again. No. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you come out of?
I am originally from Kentucky.
Okay.
Bounced around different places, but I primarily call home northern Kentucky.
Okay.
Kind of grew up on a tobacco farm. We had 80 acres. Not all 80 acres were tobacco. Maybe 10 acres were tobacco, and the rest was woods, where, being a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old growing up on 70 acres of Kentucky hillsided woods was amazing. I had wonderful experiences. My sister and brother and I grew up in that along with a bunch of other neighbors. And it was just great. It was a small community right on the Ohio River. A lot of us were I like to say, a slave labor force because there was a stretch of road about 15 miles long where all of the kids were within 5 or 6 years age of each other. And all the parents, it was like a commune. One weekend, all the kids from all the farms would get together on one farm and work for this family. And then the next weekend, we'd all go to another farm and work for that family. And then the next weekend, it's like up and down the road, we would move, working on the farm all weekend. And that way, nobody had to pay farm labor to come in and help.
Right. We went up and talked to Wade's dad, and he was talking about growing up on a tobacco farm. I mean, back in the 50s?
In the
40s maybe even.
Yeah, 30s.
Youngsters, same thing.
Yeah.
Lots of kids,
30s,
telling us all about the tobacco and how the leaves, how tall it had to be, and what they did to Interesting. Wow.
It's a very labor intensive endeavor, at least for what used to be the small family owned farms.
Sure.
I think most farms now are commercial, the conglomerate owned. There are very few small family owned farms that produce any great quantity of tobacco. Like I say, I think we raised maybe 10 or 15 acres max on our farm. But that was a significant source of income for the family for the year.
Really?
Every fall, late fall, they would take the tobacco into a town called Carrollton, which was the local tobacco warehouses.
Sure.
And the buyers would come and they'd look at your pallet of tobacco and they'd offer you X number of dollars per pound. And then you'd sell the entire lot to one or two different buyers. And that, several $1,000s would go into paying for Christmas and paying for school clothes and paying the utility bills over the winter. And then any repairs that were needed to the farm equipment all came out of that one tobacco crop. So
wow, right.
It was
and
pretty
it probably
intense.
had side things going too.
Oh yeah, my mom worked as a waitress. My dad dad was a machinist.
Okay.
So he was a gentleman farmer, he liked to say.
Right.
Wasn't a professional farmer, but it was a significant income supplement for the family.
Yeah. You had a brother and a sister?
Brother and sister.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest of now 4. At
Okay.
the time, it was just the 3 of us.
Right.
But like I say, when I started that, I was, I think, 8, and we lived on the farm until I was 13. But farming just became too difficult for the family, and we ended up moving back to town. Sold the farm, and it wasn't just the tobacco. We leased out some of our pasture land to somebody who had about a dozen cows, so we took care of a dozen cows. We had about 300 chickens, so we sold eggs and chickens. We had 15 or 20 rabbits, 4 of the meanest ducks you'll ever see in your life. We had about a dozen peach trees.
Did you have a little farm market out by the road there or selling peaches?
We didn't,
or?
but there was a farmer's market in town.
Okay, you could take them there.
On weekends, we would take our stuff into the farmer's market.
Yeah. I just went to the farm market today, picked up all kinds of fresh stuff. Love it.
That's great. It brings back flashbacks for me when we go to the farmer's market.
Yeah, right. So you lived in, what'd you say, Kentucky?
Kentucky, yes.
And so you went to high school there, clearly, or you moved out of there at 13. Where'd you end up going?
Well, still in Kentucky.
Oh, you were still, okay.
Yeah, we stayed in Kentucky. My family is still there. My mom, brother, and sister all still live in northern Kentucky. Yeah. I'm actually going back there in a couple of weeks because every October in a little town called Mount Sterling, Kentucky, they have a 3-day hunting and gun flea market. And I'm going.
Mr. Jim Howard is a marksman, and he competes quite a bit. So we're going to dive into that one a little bit later. I want to hear, oh, by the way, I saw the most insane pistol. It was called the
Alien.
The Alien. That's what it was.
Yes.
Dang it, slip of mind. Right. I saw some guys testing that out on the range, and holy cow, is that a pretty gun?
Yeah, there's actually.
Have you shot one of those?
I haven't shot one, but I saw one for sale at a pawn shop in Kentucky the last time I was there.
Okay.
And they wanted like $6,000.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was crazy expensive.
Right. That's what the guy on the show was saying. I'm sure glad my rich friends came over to let me shoot this gun.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. Where'd you go to high school?
I went
in Kentucky.
Still in Kentucky. I went to Boone County High School.
Yeah.
Graduated in 1982, class of about 375.
Okay.
But I joined the Army a year before I graduated from high school.
Okay.
I enlisted 10 days after I turned 17. I was still a junior.
Is that ROTC, or did you jump into that, or was something else?
I did something else. I did something called the Civil Air Patrol Cadet Corps. So from the time I was 12, I was with the Civil Air Patrol, which a lot of people compare to the Boy Scouts.
Okay, I see.
But it's actually Air Force Auxiliary.
Right.
And they teach advanced first aid skills. They teach camping and land navigation skills. And the Civil Air Patrol actually goes out and scours the woods looking for downed and missing aircraft.
Okay.
So, there are adult volunteers, many of which have pilot's licenses. And they will fly the area where a plane has gone missing. And then a couple of adults with, 15 or 20 of us Civil Air Patrol cadets will go out hiking through the woods and the pastures and the hills looking for the downed aircraft. And then if and when they find it, they provide first aid for any survivors, and they secure the area until the NTSB and other first responders get there. So I did that from the time I was 12. And had every intention of being a fighter pilot. I mean, I wanted to be a fighter pilot like you wouldn't believe.
Really?
So the day I turned 17, I went to the Air Force recruiter and said, I want to be a fighter pilot. What do I need to do? I'm still a junior in high school. He said, sorry, I can't help you. I said, why is that? He said, you're wearing glasses. You have to have 20/20 vision to be a fighter pilot. I said, well, I'll show you. I'll go talk to the Army and I'll become a helicopter pilot. So I went right next door to the Army recruiter and said, I want to be a helicopter pilot. And in true recruiter fashion, he says, well, I can't let you come straight off the street as a civilian into a helicopter flight training program, but if you come into the Army as something else, and then you can later transition to helicopter flight training, I can sign you up for that. And I just so happen to have all these different job openings.
In true form, like you said.
So what piqued my interest at the time was in the medical corps. As soon as I turned 16, I actually joined the local volunteer fire department. And because I had my advanced first aid training through the Civil Air Patrol, I joined the ambulance squad for the local volunteer fire department. So I'd been riding ambulance on weekends for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And the Army recruiter just so happened to have positions that he needed to fill for operating room technician, so surgical tech.
Sure.
So I thought, what the heck?
That sounds great.
It sounds great. I can do that until it's
Until
time
I
for
get
me
my
to go to
flight
flight
papers.
until I go to flight school. So I joined something called the Split Option Program.
Okay.
So I enlisted as a junior in high school in the reserves. The summer between my junior and senior year of high school, while everybody else was, out dating and partying and having a wonderful time in their last summer before graduation, I was in basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Oh, no. New Jersey.
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Oh,
yes.
have mercy.
Wonderful place. I had no idea there was so much sand on the planet.
Got all of it up your nose.
Up my nose and every other orifice you can think of. So I came back from basic training about a week before my senior year of high school started. Starting high school with a basic training buzz cut. Getting
and buff, I bet. You must have been jacked, right?
I was 5'10" and 135 pounds.
Right.
I was beanpole skinny.
Yeah. I remember when my little buddies came back from like Desert Storm or Desert Shield, it was like, I don't even know who that guy is. He's like jacked. Like, holy cow. I had a whole different look on life.
Yeah.
Woo.
Well, I did have a very different attitude on life when I got back. Basic training will do that to you.
What do you mean?
Well, I had to deal with bullies up until that point.
Yeah.
When I came back from basic training, bullies were no longer an issue.
The buzz cut alone probably gave him
the
second
buzz
to think,
cut,
right?
the hand-to-hand combat training, and the first time somebody tried to bully me and I laid him out on the floor.
Right.
I never had to deal with the bullies again.
Just takes that once, doesn't it?
Just once, yeah.
Right.
And that's all it took. So I went to reserve drills 1 week in a month, my whole senior year of high school. Continuing to do the volunteer fire department ambulance service. Also working at Chuck E. Cheese as the game room technician my senior year of high school.
Responsibility.
Then as soon as I graduated from high school in spring of 1982, I had about a week before off to Army training I went. So went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, first for the basic combat medic course, which was a prerequisite for the operating room technician course. Spent a total of about 8 months in training at Fort Sam Houston, and then off to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, just south of D.C., to DeWitt Army Hospital, where I did another few months of on-the-job training as an operating room technician, and then became a full-fledged Army surgical tech.
Wow.
Did that for a couple of years.
Does that come with like a degree or something through the Army, or what? How does that work?
No, it's Army certified. We did get certified through, it's called AORN, Association of Operating Room Nurses.
Okay.
But not enough of a certification to where I could get out of the Army and go to a hospital and be an OR nurse.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Right.
It's good enough for the Army, but not good enough for the civilians. Yeah. Which wasn't a problem because I had no intention of being a professional operating room nurse. I was going to be a damn helicopter pilot.
That could work in the operating room.
That's right. So at the end of my 4-year enlistment, I I went back to the in-service recruiter and said, okay, I'm qualified as an operating room technician. I'm now ready to transition over for a helicopter flight training program. And he looked at me like I had an arm growing out of my forehead. He said, what are you talking about? So I told him what the original recruiter had told me, and he said, oh,
That's
you're one of those.
Said.
He said, no, it doesn't work that way.
Oh, no.
And, oh, by the way, this is the mid-'80s, and the Army is overstrength in the medical corps because everybody on the planet wants to get medical training for free and then go, make 3 times as much as a civilian.
Of course.
So they wouldn't let me re-enlist and stay as an operating room technician.
After they trained you?
After they trained me. They said there's no
more
way
people to train.
There's no way you're ever going to get promoted. We have more operating room technicians than we know what to do with. The only way they'll let me re-enlist is if I reclassify as something else. So one of the things they offered me was to be a cryptolinguist, which sounded intriguing. And because I was now a re-enlistee who the Army was doing me a favor by letting me re-enlist, my choices were limited to needs of the Army. So these are the things that the Army has to fill. They're running short of.
That makes sense.
So as a cryptolinguist, my choices of language were Korean, Polish, or Czech.
That sounds really difficult, dude. Holy cow. Were you a good student?
I was not a good student.
Wow.
I was a mediocre.
That would scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, I was a mediocre B or B plus student and nearly failed high school Spanish.
So you had that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, had that going.
Yeah, I'm not going to suck at this.
So they gave me this this test. It was kind of a pre-qualification test to be able to go be a linguist called the D-Lab, Defense Language Aptitude Battery, where they sit you down in a room and they make up a language. They teach you, okay, these are the grammar rules of this made-up language, and then they ask you a bunch of questions based on these made-up grammar rules. And I walked out of that room thinking I had failed that test miserably, and much to my surprise, the recruiter said, wow, I've never seen a score this high. You qualified for all of the Cat 4 languages, Cat 4 being the most difficult languages.
Really?
Yes. And Korean is a Cat 4 language. So I ended up going to the Defense Language Institute for the first time for Korean.
That's right here.
Right here in Monterey.
Okay. Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
Actually, at the time, they had a branch in San Francisco in the 70s, 80s, and I think early 90s. They had a branch on Presidio, San Francisco. The only languages they taught there were Korean, Spanish, and German. And they were sending all the single students to the San Francisco branch because it was basically a dormitory type system. So here they had housing for the married students, and all the single students would go there. So I spent a year learning Korean in San Francisco, which was really my first time in a big city. I mean, I had been at Fort Belvoir, south of D.C., but rarely ventured into D.C. But
Country boy.
Oh, yeah. Country boy goes to San Francisco. I could have written a book about that one. It was quite an adventure. I ended up doing really well. I graduated first in my class from the Korean course, while simultaneously working as a bartender at a place called Zach's in Sausalito.
That's not easy because that's some.
I had such a fun time.
Late nights.
Yeah. I only worked weekends. I'd work Friday and Saturday nights.
Right. Okay.
An occasional weeknight to be able to keep up on my homework.
Yeah.
But working every Friday and Saturday night at Zach's, except for winters when I would take off and go to Tahoe for the weekend. But just had an amazing time in San Francisco. It was a very eye-opening experience, very maturing opportunity for me. But did my year in San Francisco, and then my next assignment was in Hawaii. I spent 3 years in Hawaii, at which time I met and married my first wife, who is a Japanese foreign exchange student. So...
In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
She was in Hawaii. Okay.
Yes, she was in Hawaii as an exchange student. I was there stationed at Schofield Barracks. We met and got married a year later. Her family didn't speak any English, so I started trying to study some Japanese on my own. Did eventually apply to and get to go back to DLI here in Monterey for Japanese.
And you already had Korean?
I already had Korean.
Okay, and then you'll go for Japanese.
Then go for Japanese. Wow. My next assignment was in Korea for 1 year. And then after a year in Korea, I applied for an active duty ROTC scholarship, something called the Green to Gold program, which I got a scholarship, came back, went to college at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, as a non-Mormon, which was also interesting.
What were your studies there?
I started off pre-med.
Okay.
Surprisingly,
Going back to the med.
I thought, okay, I'm gonna go
There
down
you
this
decided
career
you didn't
path.
want to go that way, and it's like, well, maybe I didn't hate that as much as you thought.
It's a winding path.
That's what this show's all about, man. I love the path.
So I thought, okay, I'm either going to be an ER physician or a pediatrician. That was my objective. However, organic chemistry and I didn't get along very well. And I was, to my defense, I was trying to do a 4-year degree in 3 years while also working full time.
I can speak Korean and Japanese. Why can't I get this?
That's right. It just didn't click. So after my second attempt at organic chemistry and still coming away with only a D+, the counselor said, it's time for you to look at other majors.
All right.
And with the time I had left on my scholarship, the only thing that I had accumulated enough credits to be able to graduate on time, I could transition over to international relations, which kind of fit. I'd been, the cryptolinguist is actually in the military intelligence corps in the Army.
I see, yeah.
So there was some interest there. So I switched over to international relations, finally graduated, got commissioned as a lieutenant. And my first assignment after all my lieutenant infantry training, which included, the Benning School for Boys, Fort Benning Infantry Officer Basic Course, and Airborne School and Ranger School, back to Hawaii I went, which was great for my wife. She loved Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
So back to Hawaii we went and spent 3 years there. And when it was time for me to move on to my next assignment in Hawaii, she stayed. She loved it that much.
She loved it that much.
Yes. So in Hawaii,
You're leaving? See ya.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well.
So left Hawaii, went.
So you were where were you at there? You're a major? No, you were a lieutenant.
At that point, I was a senior first lieutenant.
Where did you become an officer?
As soon as I graduated from college.
Oh, okay.
So, graduated from college.
So
the day I graduated, I commissioned as a second lieutenant.
I see.
And then went off to Hawaii.
Okay, you were an officer at that point. Okay, yeah.
So
sorry, I'm not a military guy.
No worries.
Just double checking.
Went from second lieutenant to first lieutenant and was promotable to captain at the time I left Hawaii. Picked up my second wife on the way out of Hawaii.
Nice.
Yeah.
Recycling.
Yes. Yeah. Got to keep the process going. The important thing being, don't let me go back to Hawaii, because every time I go to Hawaii, I get divorced and remarried. So we can't go to Hawaii again.
Nevada's open. Let's go there.
Yeah. So my next assignment was at Fort Lewis, Washington, where I was supposed to be transitioning. So as I was leaving Hawaii, the 25th Infantry Division was going through a reorganization. 25th Division is the division at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. They have 3 brigades. One brigade was actually moving from from Schofield Barracks to Fort Lewis, Washington, and I was moving with that brigade as a senior lieutenant about to become a captain. So the day I got to Fort Lewis, Washington and went to in process, they said, oh, well, the captain's list just came out and you're on it, which means now you're not managed as a lieutenant. So you're not going to your brigade because they have more lieutenants than they know what to do with. You're technically a captain, even though you haven't pinned it on yet. So we're going to keep you here on the 1st Corps staff.
In Washington? In
Washington State at Fort Lewis.
Great. Washington State?
Washington State, yes.
Oh, okay.
In Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I spent a year and a half on the 1st Corps staff working in personnel plans and policy as a planning officer. Running things like exercises, bilateral or multilateral exercises. The biggest one I did was called an ABCA, Australian, British, Canadian, and American multinational training exercise.
Training, what do you mean?
We'd get together and do it. It's called a TOCX, a Tactical Operations Center, or a command post exercise. There's not actually troops in the field. It's just all the staff and planners, and they do simulated war games.
Oh, I see, right.
So I did a couple of those, did a couple of deployments to Japan, which was great because I knew people in Japan. I spoke Japanese.
Right.
So
how cool must that be?
Yeah,
I just know people in Japan.
It's pretty nice.
I just go there, I speak the language.
I knew people. I spoke the language. Yeah, it was.
How cool.
how to impress friends.
Yeah, and influence people.
Deploy to Japan, go to a restaurant off base, and be able to read the menu.
Yeah, right. Just off the cuff, just start ordering.
Yeah.
Throw people off.
So while stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, had my first child at 32 years old.
Okay.
Became a father for the first time, which
Wow.
was a life-changing experience, as I'm sure everybody knows.
Yes.
My daughter was born there. And then after a year and a half at Fort Lewis, Washington, it was time for me to go on to the Captain's Career Course. That's what they call it now. It used to be called the Advanced Course. I was still an infantry officer, and at the time, the Army was experimenting with this branch exchange program, where for every advanced course, they wanted representatives from all the different branches in each advanced course. So, for instance, for the infantry advanced course, there'd be one field artillery officer, one armor officer, one military police, one quartermaster, one medical corps, one air defense, on and on and on. So my branch assignments manager called me up and said, okay, you're scheduled to go during this time frame, you're scheduled to go to the advanced course, but I'd like you to consider going to the air defense advanced course. And then if you do that, if you fill this slot for me, if you fill this requirement, I guarantee you'll have your choice of assignments afterwards. Go wherever you want to go after you graduate from this air defense advanced course. It worked out okay because my wife at the time was an air defense person. She worked in Army Air Defense. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I want to go to Fort Carson, Colorado afterwards there because I love the mountains. I love the snow. I always wanted to go to Fort Carson. I thought, this is my opportunity. We'll go to the Fort Bliss, Texas in El Paso for the Air Defense Advanced Course. And then from there, we will go to Fort Carson, Colorado. So we pack up our daughter, who's at this point about 6 months old, and off we go to Fort Bliss, Texas. And go to the Air Defense Advanced Course, and I'm the sole infantry officer in the Air Defense Advanced Course with a bunch of other captains. And myself and the armor officer are the only two officers in the class that have a ranger tab, which means we have gone through and graduated successfully from ranger school. The commanding general of the air defense program at Fort Bliss sees the two of us at orientation and calls us aside after the orientation. Says, hey, I got a proposal for you guys. Yes, sir. What can we do for you?
Yeah, right.
1-star general, and we're just captains, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
We're gonna listen to his proposal.
Yes, sir.
He says, you two are Ranger qualified, and we have a bunch of lieutenants in the Air Defense Basic Officers course that are interested in going to Ranger School after they graduate from the basic course. We would like for you to teach them a pre-Ranger course, which kind of makes sense because at Fort Bliss is where they had the desert phase of Ranger School anyway. So we had, the armor guy and I had walked that desert for days and days and days and done our missions and done patrols and done scouting. And so we were very familiar with the area where Ranger School was. So we said, well, yes, sir, we'd be happy to run a pre-Ranger course for your lieutenants.
Was there such thing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
there was.
yeah,
You didn't have to make it up by...
Well, we were able to reach back to the Ranger School and get a basic curriculum
I see. Okay.
on things to teach.
So you weren't in the dark just
No,
starting
we
from scratch.
had a lot of help.
Okay, good.
We actually had a lot of help. And then this is the interesting part about his proposal, because normally a proposal, there's a give and take.
Yeah.
And so we asked him, so, sir, if we teach this program, what's in it for us?
Yeah.
He says, I'll let you graduate from my Air Defense Advanced course. I'm like, well, dude, if I do well enough, I'm going to graduate anyway.
Thanks for that opportunity.
And he said, well, I will not interfere with your graduation. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I see how you're going to be now.
So this other captain and I, we end up spending our weekends, 15 weekends in a row, we spent teaching the pre-Ranger course for 12 air defense lieutenants, who then went on to Ranger School after graduation from the Air Defense Basic course, and 10 of the 12 graduated from Ranger School on the first time with no recycles, no failures, no drops. 10 of the 12, which we were pretty darn proud of.
I bet.
We did finally graduate from the Air Defense Advanced course. Did not get to go to Fort Carson, Colorado, as promised, of course, by the branch assignments officer, because suddenly the the officer manning distribution changed for the Army, and there were no slots anymore.
Of course.
So
Something like
now
that.
it was, again, back to needs of the Army.
Yeah, right.
And at this point, the needs of the Army were Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot going on right then. What year was that? Like late 80s?
This
Storm didn't start till what, 89?
This was 1998.
Okay.
Yeah, this was 98.
So
Yeah.
So there were some needs going on for sure.
Yeah. So 98, we went to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and when we got there, the unit I was assigned to, 2/3 of the unit was already in Iraq because they were there. They had been part of a QRF, Quick Reaction Force, that deployed when Saddam and his folks got a little squirrely.
Sure.
They started violating the no-fly zone, so they went there as a show of force. So 2/3 of the unit I was assigned to was gone when I showed up, which made for an interesting in-processing and transition. We got to Fort Stewart, didn't know where to live, didn't know where to go, didn't know anybody there. Normally, the military is really good about providing sponsors, somebody who's already in the unit who will kind of be your welcoming committee to kind of show you the ropes. Didn't happen on the way to Fort Stewart.
Just get a hotel and just
we just had to
start
kind of
putting your feelers out.
Had to scramble and just find our way around, figure out what was what. Did eventually get things worked out. The unit came back from Iraq. And evidently there had been some problems when they were in Iraq, a lot of personnel and personality issues. Several officers actually resigned their commissions when they got back from Iraq for reasons I was never clear on.
Yeah. Didn't want to be.
Didn't want to know, didn't care. Yeah, didn't want to get involved. But what that did was push me further into the queue of becoming a company commander. Normally, when you go to a unit, you spend 1.5 years or 2 years working on a staff section somewhere, learning the ropes, learning the personalities, learning how the unit operates, and then you get put into a company command position. I was there 3 months, 2 months of which 2/3 of the unit was gone, and as soon as they came back, I was put in command of a company. I consider it a successful company command. I mean, we didn't deploy. We did a lot of training exercises. We didn't go to war, which was great. I was in command for about 19 months when we did go to a training exercise at Fort Irwin, California, the National Training Center, which is like the desert training center down in Southern California.
Oh, yeah, right.
It was a mechanized infantry command, but our company had gone to be dismounted infantry to support a larger brigade operation. And in the middle of the exercise, I get called into the Battalion Operations Center by the Personnel Administration, the S1 personnel guys. And they said, so evidently you're the senior company commander in the division now. You've been in command for 18 months. So you have two choices. You can either take a second command of, it's called HHC Division, Headquarters and Headquarters Company for the division, which is the command organization for all of the senior staff officers. So as a captain, I would have majors and colonels and generals under my command, which makes no sense whatsoever. It's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, you're basically...
That's a landmine.
You're the administrator for all these folks.
Right.
So that's option A, take charge of a second command as HHC commander, or I have this ROTC job I need somebody to fill. Our division is tasked with providing somebody to go ROTC. After company command in the Army, you normally go to one of the 3 R's: ROTC, recruiting, or readiness group. Readiness group is the guys who train National Guard and Reserves. Recruiting command, of course, is what it sounds like. You go command a recruiting detachment somewhere. Or ROTC, I'm thinking, hey, I could go to ROTC, go to a college, get a master's degree while I'm there, and ROTC's a cushy job. He says, oh, by the way, it's in Kentucky. I'm thinking, score! I can go be close to my family.
Heard that.
I go to either University of Kentucky or University of Louisville. It's probably one of those two.
Sure, yeah.
I said, yeah, sign me up. I'll take the ROTC job. He says, I don't have a whole lot of details on it yet, but when we get back from Fort Irwin, I'll get you all the details. So we spend the next 2 weeks in the box, in the training area at Fort Irwin. Get back to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and start getting the details. And yes, it's an ROTC job. Yes, it's in Kentucky. No, it's not teaching ROTC. No, it's not at a university. It's an ROTC brigade recruiting office job at Fort Knox under ROTC brigade headquarters. So I get to Fort Knox, and I'm now the recruiting officer for ROTC for a 4-state region.
Holy cow.
So for from Fort Knox, I have all of the colleges that have Army ROTC in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia.
So each one of those colleges has their own recruiters that's under you.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, right,
A total of 30
right.
colleges
Oh, have
that
mercy.
each has a college recruiting officer.
Right.
But I'm the overall recruiting
Yeah,
officer
yeah.
for the entire brigade area, 4-state region. And I have to go to every college every semester, 30 colleges every semester for 2 years. I was on the road 4 days a week for 2 years. Me and my 12-passenger van full of boxes of Frisbees and drink koozies and T-shirts.
Oh, no kidding.
And hats, and going to the National Honor Society Conference and the National Student Nurses Association Conference, and any conference where there are high school seniors or college freshmen and sophomore where there were recruiting opportunities to try to recruit people for ROTC. I had I believe at the time it was about a $4 million scholarship fund that I was responsible for trying to recruit against. Big push on trying to get nurses at the time. The Army was begging for people to come into the nursing program, offering full ride scholarships. But at the time, we were competing against companies like FedEx and UPS, which had major hubs in Louisville, Kentucky, and they were offering full ride scholarships to University of Kentucky for people who would work third shift. So, and they weren't requiring a 4 to 8 year military obligation afterwards, which mine did. So it was difficult to give scholarships away at this time. This was. This was 98, 99.
Okay.
So pre 9/11.
That's right up there, yeah.
Yeah, so not a lot of motivation.
Not
Yeah.
10 years before,
not a lot of motivation for people to join the military at that point. It's post Desert Storm, but pre 9/11.
That's unfortunately, I was thinking that you almost need something big to happen to get a big rush into the military, you know.
So it was really surprising. One of the biggest difficulties I had finding people that were qualified for scholarships was particularly in Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, that area. I mean, everybody has heard the stereotypes of, the deliverance people.
Sure.
But to some degree, I had to deal with that. I had difficulty finding people who graduated high school. I had difficulty finding people who at 18, 19 years old didn't already have a criminal record in that particular area. So it was a tough job. Trying to give college scholarships away was much more difficult than I thought it would be.
Wow.
So did that for 2 years. Had a second child in the process of doing that.
While you were in Kentucky.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, third child. My
third.
Yeah. Second was born at Fort Stewart. Third was born in Kentucky.
Okay. Yeah.
So a fellow Kentuckian. Yes.
Right.
Had to keep it going. From there, I found out about from Fort Knox. I found out about a program called the FAO program that the Army has. FAO is Foreign Area Officer.
Okay.
And these are the folks who work in embassies around the world. And being someone who already had a degree in international relations with a minor in Asian studies and already spoke Korean and Japanese, I thought I might be a good fit for that program. So I applied and got accepted, and much to my surprise, did not become an Asian FAO. They selected me to be a Middle East FAO.
Weird.
Yeah, again, the needs of the Army rears its ugly
crazy.
head. And keep in mind, this is before 9/11.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm going to be in Middle East FAO. So back to the Defense Language Institute I go, this time for Arabic. Started my Arabic class on September 1st, 2001.
Okay, yeah.
10 days before
kidding.
9/11.
Wow.
Yeah. So it added a whole new level of intensity to learning Arabic.
Yeah, I bet. Right.
So spent 18 months learning Arabic. Did not graduate first in my class this time. Being mid-30s and having 3 kids and trying to learn a very difficult language. Ironically, at the time it was one of the 5 Cat 4 languages that DLI taught. So
Really?
Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Arabic, and I think Russian were the 5 Cat 4 languages. And I already had 2 of them and was picking up a 3rd.
Right. Well, Arabic didn't help much in 9/11. They weren't Arabs, were they?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
I've talked to people that are learning Farsi. They're learning all these different Middle Eastern languages.
Yeah,
So
I
get confused.
Yeah, folks involved in 9/11 were Egyptian and Saudis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
they did speak Arabic.
Yeah, I see.
So after 18 months of learning Arabic, the next phase of my foreign area officer training was to go to a command and staff college somewhere in the region. So I was scheduled to go to the staff college in Jordan. But there was a time gap between the time I graduated from the Arabic basic course at DLI and the time I was supposed to go to the Jordanian staff college. So when I graduated from the Arabic course, the FAO assignments guy says, hey, you got couple of options. You can either stay there in Monterey and you can start the Arabic intermediate course and do 6 months of the course and then move on to Jordan. Or I have an opening for some on-the-job training in Yemen. And I thought, well, I'm kind of burnt out on learning language, so let's go to Yemen. Yeah. So off to Yemen I go by myself, leaving family here in Monterey. Go to Yemen and spent about 6 months doing on-the-job training as a foreign military sales and foreign military assistance officer. So it's basically processing people in the Yemeni military to go to U.S. military colleges like West Point and the Officer Basic Course, Ranger School, Airborne School. Also assisting with the Yemen military as they built up their military industrial supply system. They actually purchased a bunch of U.S. military Humvees and M16 rifles. They actually had 2 old retired U.S. Air Force C-130 aircraft, one of which was a parts donor.
Yeah, right. A couple of parts rigs.
Yeah, affectionately referred to as a hangar queen.
Right.
The other one was functional. But the U.S. wasn't the only country that the Yemenis bought military equipment from. They bought fighter planes from the Russians. They had MiG-17s and MiG-19s. And one of the biggest challenges I had while doing this job was the Yemeni government, Ministry of Defense, asks the U.S. to help them figure out how to retrofit their C-130s to be able to do air-to-air refueling of the MiGs. Yeah, not something that the U.S. really wanted them to be able to do. I was
going to say, maybe we can, but will we?
Physically, it was probably possible. Politically, no, not possible.
Let's not go there, right?
So that was quite a challenging time.
Oh,
but Yemen, this was before the civil war that's going on now. It was actually between civil wars. So Yemen had a civil war between North and South Yemen in the 90s.
And now it's East and West? No, I don't know.
Well, it's still North and South.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's North and South Yemen. So the capital of Yemen at the time was Sana'a in the north. But the biggest city in the south is Aden. It's a port city. And Aden is where all the oil is. Not a lot of oil, but the oil that's in the country is in the south. And they actually have a floating refinery ship outside the port of Aden. So that's where all the money is in Aden. And there's a Sunni Shia divide also. So there was a civil war in the 90s. The civil war ended. There was peace. Everybody was happy except those who didn't live in Sana'a or Aden. The rest of the country is basically tribal territory.
I see.
So to travel from one city to the other, which is about a 6 to 7 hour drive, you have to have Yemeni police and Yemeni special forces gun truck escorts because
No kidding.
the tribes in the area will have, they call them financial roadblocks. So even though it's a country-owned, government-owned highway from Sanaa to Aden, you might run up against 5 different roadblocks by 5 different tribes between the 2 cities where you have to pay a toll to the tribe to be able to
Drive on that.
to transfer on to the next city, town, or county. And if you didn't pay the toll, you become a financial hostage. They do tribal kidnappings, and they will hold you until such time as your government pays a ransom to get you back. So it was Yemen was an interesting place to be. A couple of other things that happened in Yemen that I really can't get into right now, but
sure, right.
It was a strange, surreal place to be. And now, of course, they're embroiled in another civil war.
Boy, that
again,
day or two before you had to make that 6-hour drive must have just been, this would be it, bro.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a ride.
Had to have your ducks in a row before every move. Yeah. There's a civil war going on again in Yemen. The Houthis are a large political organization. They are very anti-West. They're the ones that are shooting rockets and missiles at ship traffic.
That's why the ships have to go all the way around.
Yeah,
They're not going through straits anymore.
Yemen is, if you think about what Saudi Arabia was like 100 years ago or 150 years ago before oil, that's what Yemen is like today.
Really?
Yeah, it's there's a surprisingly large drug culture there. There's a herb, a little tree or bush called Qat, Q-U-A-T, that has a hallucinogenic effect when you chew the leaves. And every day the country shuts down at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and every male 10 years old or older sits around at Qat chews.
Really?
And they sit around and drink tea, and they chew Qat, and they tell stories, and that's it. That is what the country... The working day is between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m., and the rest of the day they sit around and chew Qat.
This must be the human being for the last million years.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think it is,
It was a strange...
Let's just living their best life after 2 o'clock, man.
Yeah.
We've done our 4 hours.
Afternoon siesta starts at 2 and it doesn't end until midnight.
Right.
So that was Yemen. I was there for about 7.5 months. Some things happened in Yemen that prevented me from being able to make my start time for the Jordanian Staff College. So I got rerouted to Kuwait. So I went to the Staff College in Kuwait, where my wife at the time and kids joined me. We were in Kuwait for 18 months. I went to the Staff College there. The strange thing about the Kuwaiti Staff College is the Kuwaitis don't teach it. They have so much money that they don't have to do anything they don't want to do.
They just sub it out.
So yeah, they do. They subcontract it out. They contract the British to come in and teach their staff college. It was staff and faculty from Shrivenham, which is the British Staff College. So the class was all taught in English, so I didn't really have to learn Arabic.
You went all that school for nothing.
Yeah, my Arabic was probably worse after a year and a half in Kuwait than it was when I got to Kuwait, because everything was in English.
Yeah.
But we did get to take some great class trips. Shrivenham was our sister school, so at Kuwaiti expense, they flew the whole class to Reading, England, and we spent a month in England, where we went to a British Air Force base and did an air-to-air refueling mission on one of their refueling planes. We went out on a British aircraft carrier. We went to displays of British firepower and their armor and infantry capabilities. We went from there to Jordan, where one of the Kuwaiti royal princes is friends with who is now King Abdullah, who was Prince Abdullah at the time. So he invited us over to visit Jordan and see their military operations. And Prince Abdullah was the leader of the Jordanian Special Forces at the time. So we had a great encounter with them. We went from there to Brussels, Belgium, and got to go to SHAPE, Supreme Headquarters of Allied Powers in Europe, and to NATO headquarters.
Wow.
And
What history.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Doing staff rides and battle analysis. Went to the Battle of Waterloo, where Napoleon met his demise.
British Navy. Oh, it just must have been amazing. Yeah. Wow.
So I had a great opportunity by going to the Kuwaiti Staff College. Came back from Kuwait after a year and a half and went through divorce number 2. On the way here, back to Monterey to go to the Naval Postgraduate School as a student.
Okay, yeah.
The third leg of FAO training is to get another master's degree. So I came here for a master's in national security affairs with an emphasis on Middle East.
It almost seems like somebody put you on a fast track to the top, but it went all over the place, so it wasn't intentional.
Again, it was a very windy path.
Yeah, so he's a smart guy. I would just move him on, but which way? I don't know. This is open.
Yeah.
This is open. Wow. What a fantastic life.
I had some amazing opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, for a kid who grew up on a tobacco farm in Kentucky, I never dreamed that I would do some of the things. I got to go on a 5-day cruise down the Nile River on a riverboat.
Oh, my God.
I got to go in King Tut's tomb and the Temple of Isis, and just amazing.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was a kid.
Who didn't?
And got to do those things for real. It was amazing.
That's so cool.
So back to Monterey, Naval Postgraduate School, master's in national
back on your own,
and met third and final and best wife. Took three times to get it right. But I finally got it right. Got married again at Naval Postgraduate School. We've been married almost 19 years now.
Of course, I know your wife. I know your daughter. They all come in to Live Well Therapeutic Massage when you guys are stressed out or have traveling pains and that kind of thing. You know, God, I see you guys everywhere. I see.
We're all over town.
I see you at the. We're gonna see you at the Office Depot. We saw you over at the restaurant, the Home Depot. Everywhere we go.
So we
travel in the same circle.
Yeah. So finished Naval Postgraduate School with my third master's degree. So I got 2 masters in Kuwait. First one was from the Kuwait Joint Command and Staff College. So going to the school got me a master's in military science.
In military science, okay.
Right. And while I was there, I took classes at Kuwait University and got a master's in Middle East Studies. So those are my first 2. Third master's was here at Naval Postgraduate School. Graduated from NPS, and now I'm a fully trained, fully qualified FAO, Foreign Area Officer.
Right. What was the second? Tell me more about this. The second one, military what was this? What was the second?
Oh, the
master's degree?
second master's was Middle East Studies.
Middle East study. What did that cover? That's a huge blanket. It could be a lot underneath that.
Well, it was because it was taught in Kuwait. It was very Kuwait centric. It was very Gulfy centric.
Okay,
right. All the Arab countries along the Persian Gulf, they refer to themselves as Gulfies.
Right.
It's even a different dialect than what the rest of the Middle East speaks. Yes.
Like Kentucky to California type dialect.
Very much so. Yes.
Right.
There's Gulf dialect. There's Iraqi dialect. Right. There's Egyptian dialect. There's Levantine dialect. The Levant.
But can they understand each other?
They can understand each other. And when you watch the news in any of those countries, they will speak Gulf dialect. It's called MSA, Modern Standard Arabic.
Right.
And it's like the Queen's English.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
MSA.
And it's what they teach at DLI.
Okay.
So when I got to Kuwait and started speaking Modern Standard Arabic, people understood what I was saying, but they'd kind of laugh. You know, they knew, this guy hasn't been in country
like
very long.
Like you're from Louisiana or something. You're like, did you ever say that?
Conversely, I mean, when I went to Yemen, which is an Arab country, not a word. I couldn't understand a word they said.
Really?
They couldn't understand what I said. It's a very, very different dialect.
Really?
Same in Morocco. I went to Morocco, and they speak mostly French, but the Arabic that they speak there is a Berber dialect, which again sounds nothing like the modern standard Arabic that I learned. So depending on what country I went to, I may or may not be able to communicate. I could always communicate to them, but I couldn't understand what they were saying back. They'd understand modern standard Arabic, but they may not be able to speak it back to them.
Right.
Yeah. But the Master's in Middle Eastern Studies was very much on Middle East history, politics, culture.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
How interesting.
It's great. I got to study, some of the Arab classics. The Middle East is is the origin of advanced mathematics.
Of everything.
It's the origin of physics and chemistry
Right.
and just, 1,000 years ago, that was the cultural center of the world.
Sure.
And they are very proud of it and
bet.
very proud to
You
teach it,
should be.
especially to a Westerner.
Yeah, right.
I took a trip to Egypt while I was in Yemen, went to Egypt, and from the hotel I stayed at, they arranged tours. You could ride a horse up Mount Sinai and watch the sunrise
Wow.
on top of Mount Sinai.
Right.
And along the route, along the trail, there are different tents where, the Bedouins will set up selling tea and little cakes. And I think at the time it was during the first Bush administration, and it was an election year. And I stopped and talked to this Bedouin guy, probably in his late 70s, early 80s, sitting there holding the reins of my horse while he's serving me tea, and had the most in-depth conversation about the U.S. Elections than I've ever had with any American.
Wow.
And this guy's in the middle of nowhere, Mount Sinai, 2 o'clock in the morning, an Egyptian Bedouin, and he knows as much about American politics and about the election that was ongoing as anybody you can imagine. And
That's
I was
crazy. It doesn't affect them like it affects us. Why would you know that? Or does it?
It does affect them.
Yeah, okay.
Because, their country is very much based, their economy is based on tourism, and who is the president and what the U.S. policies are towards that country have a big impact on the tourism. And
I see, right.
not just the tourism, but domestic policy within the country as well. So they're very much focused on what happens with U.S. politics,
Sure, right.
which really surprised me.
Yeah, me too. Right.
yeah.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed.
So where was I? Okay, so I finished my third master's degree here at Naval Postgraduate School, and my next assignment
Tell me
was
what the third master's degree was?
National Security Affairs.
National Security Affairs. What does that entail?
That is U.S. foreign policy development, national strategy. It's basically the policy and planning processes for how both the U.S. State Department and the Department of Defense interact with foreign governments and foreign military.
I see. So it's in-house,
Yeah.
national stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, but how you deal with
Yes,
foreign governments
very
also.
much how we deal with foreign
I see.
governments and how we interact
Right.
and how everything is interconnected.
Okay, right.
Things like rational actor theory and
Yeah.
negotiation and strategy.
So now you speak 3 languages. You got 3 masters at this point. Got a new wife.
Yep.
3 kids.
Yeah,
Going in
well,
threes, bro.
Married into 1 more kid, so we're a family of 6 now. So my next assignment is at Fort Hood, Texas,
All right.
knowing full well that they were about to deploy to Iraq.
Okay.
This was in 2005.
Now, where did you meet your current wife? She's from Texas, right?
She's from Texas, but she's lived here in the Central Coast since she was 13, 14 years old.
Okay, so you met her and then just ended up going to Texas. Not
she
because
stayed
of
here.
her.
Yeah, she stayed
I see.
here.
Okay,
It was just
okay,
coincidence
sure.
that
Yeah,
I got
good
stationed at
coincidence.
Fort Hood, Texas, because when I went to Texas, they knew I was going to be going to Iraq for a year, so they stayed here.
Might as well, right?
Yeah, family stayed here.
Sure.
Because my objective was to go to Texas, deploy to Iraq, and hopefully get back to California so that the family didn't have to move.
Yeah.
Because at this point, kids are going into junior high school.
Sure,
and high
right.
school.
You're
Yeah.
thinking maybe you want to drop some roots here in
Yeah.
California, sure.
So went to Fort Hood, was there for about 9 months, commuting from Fort Hood back to Monterey, like every other weekend.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I built up some frequent flying.
Yeah, I
hours.
bet you did.
Yep, flying from Austin through Vegas. I could leave Austin about 5 o'clock Friday afternoon, go through Vegas, land in Monterey at midnight on Friday, leave Monterey about 6 o'clock Sunday evening, go through Vegas.
Bounce off Colorado. Vegas again.
Land in Austin at 5 o'clock in the morning and drive from Austin back to Fort Hood and get there just in time for PT in the morning.
Oh, jeez. Ready to go.
Yeah, did that about every other weekend for 9 months until we deployed to Iraq. It was supposed to be a 1-year, 12-month deployment. The day we hit the ground, they said, oh, by the way, you're extended. It's now a 15-month deployment.
As long as the kids don't know that you're going through a nightmare and you're just there as often as you can, and then I'll jump back into my nightmare and they'll just appreciate when I'm here and
Yep.
let them know. That's cool.
15 months in Iraq. Lots of fun experiences in Iraq. My claim to fame is that I was the liaison officer from the U.S. Army to the Iraqi Ground Forces Commanding General of all their civil affairs units. CA PSYOPs, Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations, is under one umbrella. He was an Iraqi 2-star general who was from Erbil, which is up in the north. And he liked to visit his hometown frequently. And every time he'd go visit his hometown, I would have to go with him as his liaison officer. And Iraq was divided into areas of responsibility, division areas. So there was one Army division that controlled the southwest, one Army division controlled the southeast.
Right.
MND, Multinational Division Northeast, was actually a joint operation run by the South Korean Army, the ROK Army, Republic of Korea, which is where Erbil was. So when I would go with General Ghazi to MND Northeast, to Erbil, to then visit the military base there, I would have to do Korean to Arabic translation.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Korean to Arabic.
Did you have to run
Arabic
it through your English and then back through? I can't even
initially
imagine.
I did, but it got to be, it was so slow and tedious that eventually I had to try to remove the English filter and go straight from Korean to Arabic and Arabic to Korean.
Have mercy.
It was not fun. But I did it.
It just didn't get any better. I'm sure it got better. But,
oh, boy.
Sludging through that.
That's my claim to fame. I was able to do Korean to Arabic translation for a while.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a mind blender.
It is. And people wonder, how do you do multitasking? It's easy.
Those couldn't be much further different languages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
As far as context.
Doesn't get any farther apart than that.
Everything, right? You just have to think about it. And then.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
cool
after 15 months in Iraq.
Any bad times in Iraq? Was there? I know there were some good times and bad times going on there.
There were some good times, but there were also some bad times. We had several mortar and rocket attacks.
Right.
A couple of sniper incidents, a couple of IED incidents, and a couple of helicopters that took some rounds. Fortunately, no injuries while I was in Iraq. None for me.
Yeah.
We did have, on September 11th, ironically, the largest rocket attack by insurgents against our base. A couple of people killed just outside our base. I did get racked in the head. I was actually in my office when the 240 millimeter rocket hit about 60 yards from our little building that we were working out of.
Wow.
And knocked a 50-inch computer monitor that was mounted on the wall, knocked it off the wall and hit me in the head. So it rung my bell, but that's the closest thing to an injury I got while I was in Iraq.
Bump on the head and a little bit of concussion from the explosion of that too.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That'll rack you.
Yeah, it did. Had some burn pit exposure that I later found out is problematic. But yeah,
It's hard to sleep when mortars are coming in, eh?
It is.
Jesus Christ.
They have this air
snipers.
Yeah, they have an air defense system. It was called the Sea Whiz.
Oh, okay, right.
And it's basically one of those miniguns, a Gatling gun that's radar controlled, that would pick up incoming rockets and mortars and then shoot them out of the sky.
Heat censored kind of thing? Or?
Not heat, just motion censored.
Oh, I see, right.
Radar. But Toby Keith, the country singer, was actually doing a USO tour concert on our base one night when we had the air defense warning sirens went off, so everybody had to scramble and get into the cement bunkers.
Oh, geez.
And you hear the Sea Whiz, going off, and one of the rockets, shrapnel from the rocket that the Sea Whiz took out, actually landed in the middle of where all of us were standing to watch the concert.
Wow.
And Toby Keith had some colorful words to say when he came back up on stage.
He was a big feller, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a big guy, yeah. And he was quite colorful and quite rude that they had interrupted his concert.
How rude.
He was offended, yeah.
That's funny.
So right near the end of our 15 months in Iraq, I get another call from my assignments officer, an email actually. He says,
like a travel agent at this point.
On paper, you've been stationed in Texas for the last 2 years, so your next assignment is going to be an unaccompanied assignment. So it's a rotation. You do one assignment with your family and the next assignment without your family. And that was the expectation. So he said, on paper, you've been stationed in Texas for 2 years, so your next assignment is going to be Tripoli, Libya for a year without your family. And I said, dude, I'm in Iraq right now without my family.
Right.
Well, technically, you're still stateside.
Right, but
I said, well, here's the deal. I've got 26 years in now. I think I might just go ahead and retire unless you can sweeten the deal and get me something a little better.
yeah.
He says, well, your family's still in Monterey, right? I said, yes. He says, well, I can send you back to DLI to be on the staff at the language school. I said, I'll take it.
Twist my arm a little harder,
Twist
buddy.
my arm, yes. So back to Monterey I came to be the associate dean at the Defense Language Institute.
Wow, you must have been stoked when you offered that.
Oh, boy.
Holy
yeah,
cow.
absolutely.
Wow.
Way better than Tripoli, Libya.
Yeah, beats crap out of Tripoli any day.
Yeah. So I was associate dean here for 2 years, and then my last year, I actually came out on orders to go to another assignment. I was going to go to Tampa, Florida, to CENTCOM, to be a Middle East desk officer at CENTCOM headquarters. At this time, I've got 27, 28, 29 years in. My kids are now firmly entrenched in Monterey, starting high school, junior high school. I don't want to be dragging them around the world anymore.
Right.
It's time to start talking about retirement.
Yeah. Pushing 30 years.
Yeah.
Woo.
So I went ahead and submitted my retirement packet, and at the time I submitted my packet, the Naval Postgraduate School, which I had been a student at previously, was just beginning to host something called the FAO Advanced Program. So it's an advanced training program for foreign area officers.
Perfect.
It was a congressionally mandated program. They were starting a 3-year pilot, and it was going to be hosted here at the Naval Postgraduate School. So my last year at Defense Language Institute, I worked closely with the people starting up the FAO program at the Naval Postgraduate School because they didn't have any FAOs working in the FAO program.
No, shoo-in.
So
bro.
I was the FAO advisor as I started standing things up. When I retired out of the Army on Friday, the 28th of February in 2011, I had a 2-day retirement and then went to work Monday for the Naval Postgraduate School running the FAO program.
One-day vacation after that 28 years.
Yeah.
Ready to go again.
So 30 years Army, and then became a traitor and went to work for the Navy as a civilian.
Rotten bastard. You.
Yeah.
Turncoat.
I still hear about it from some of my
Bet you
Army
do.
friends. Yeah, they
You're a
ask
squid
me,
now.
Yeah, they
right?
ask me every December when there's an Army Navy game which jersey I wear, and I assure them that I still wear the Army jersey every year during the Army Navy game. I sit on the Army side. I wave my Army flag.
Right.
Of course, some of the Navies, some of the squiddies will come do things like fill my office with blue and gold balloons or saran wrap my truck shut so that I can't get into it. So,
Damn Army bastard. You.
yeah, I catch hell every year during the Army Navy game, being the Army guy working on the Navy
right.
days.
Exactly.
But
That's been good though, huh?
it has been good.
Yeah.
I've been there now 13 years. I used my post 9/11 GI Bill to go on and get 2 more master's degrees.
Oh, why not?
Like I had nothing
you were
else.
bored, right? 13 years after the original 29 or 28?
I did 30 in the Army, and now I've been a Navy civilian for 13.
On top of that. Oh,
Yeah,
no kidding.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So use my
40
post 9/11 GI Bill to get another master's in human resource management and another one in public administration, which suited me great for working for the Navy as a civilian. I'm able to work administration issues a lot more efficiently and effectively now.
I figured that was a good match right there.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, it worked out
Perfect.
great. Unfortunately, the FAO program that I was running eventually dried up. It started as a 3-year pilot with the understanding that, Department of Defense funded it for the first 3 years with the expectation that one of the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marine, would then pick up the funding and carry the baton forward. And it just never happened. So after 5 years, 3-year pilot plus 2 extensions, the program dried up. And then NPS kept me on as a staff member in the IT department. So I do project management for the IT department. So for enterprise IT across campus.
Right.
And that's where I sit on a day-to-day basis now, counting down the 2 years, 3 months, and 6 days until I don't do that anymore. At which time I hope to get in our RV and travel the country.
Yeah, right. So what kind of deal? I was talking to you one day, and you were saying that some kind of cyber threat or something was going on. You had to be there at a certain time, and we were trying to get you on the podcast. And it was like, oh my God, I'm like herding cats down there. It was just like, was that in the college itself, or in the okay? I see. It wasn't a national thing.
No, it wasn't a national thing.
Okay.
It's just so NPS is a target of opportunity for cyber
terrorists. Right.
It's because it's an institution of higher learning. Every hostile nation wants to hack into our network and find out what we're doing and how they can disrupt us.
Right. It's funny. I've often thought about that. This seems like one of the safest places in the world. There's so much military right here. But then it's like, wait a minute, we got a whole college full of all of our officers. That's a strike point. That's a scary part too, to have that many intelligence all in one spot. Yeah.
Well, we do have to go through mandatory cybersecurity training every year. We have to go through mandatory counterintelligence and surveillance training every year. Just to keep us aware of what the possible threats are.
Exactly. Right. Wow. Crazy.
So they keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
Our cybersecurity department, they publish monthly statistics that talk about the number of hacking attempts and phishing attempts and spam that we get, and it's in the millions.
Oh my God!
On a monthly basis.
Really?
Yeah.
Foreign
intrusion.
Mostly foreign intrusion.
Foreign intrusion efforts. Yep.
Wow. Crazy.
So it's money well spent on our cyber defenses.
Yeah, buddy. But trying to understand it all at 60 is like, what?
Yeah. The people that I work with, they laugh at me when I tell them I'm not an IT guy. I'm really not. I'm not trained in IT, but I did somehow manage to take and pass something called the CISSP certification exam. And that stands for Certified Information Security Professional. Certified Information Security System Professional, something like CISSP. Yeah.
Right.
Which is like one of the highest cybersecurity IT exams you can take. And what I found was, after 5 master's degrees, it's not about knowing the data. It's about knowing how to take a test.
Yeah, right.
So I was able to take the test. I did like an 8-hour boot camp, took the test, and by process of elimination was able to figure out most of the answers without necessarily knowing all the details of what the question was asking.
Right.
But I know just enough now to be dangerous.
Yeah, right. I know, right, exactly.
I know how to keep my own computer at home from getting hacked. I know how to help my wife get the computer hooked up to the printer. I know how to download all the stuff from our cell phones onto our computers without losing things. So I know just enough about IT to be dangerous.
You can hook up a printer?
I can hook up.
Sign this guy up for the military, man.
I can wirelessly hook up a printer. I can network it.
Okay, I'm out. I don't even know what you're talking about now. You lost me.
Yeah.
Well, you and I are on a club, and Wade also, of the Monterey Improvements Club, and we meet first Monday, and we were sitting around, and you were shooting the crap with Changiz, who's been a Green Beret for God knows how many years, probably the longest in history, I think, and he says, what are you shooting? Oh, I'm shooting this. And then you guys went into this. I'm shooting this. I was like, oh, boy. Just being a fly on the wall, listening to you two guys talking about guns and shit, man.
We went off on a tangent.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. So I'm a member of the of the Carmelgunclub and the Monterey County Swiss Rifle Club. Two different organizations. Carmelgunclub does a variety of different types of matches. We're NRA and CMP, Civilian Marksmanship Program, competition club. So we'll do both rifle and pistol.
Oh, really?
At different ranges. Coming up the end of this month, we have 2 CMP-sanctioned state pistol championships. So we've got the Service Pistol Championship and then a Revolver Championship. Next month, we have a CMP National High-Power Rifle match. So it's a different type of match every month, just to keep it entertaining. A couple of times a year, we break out the Swiss rifles, which are World War II era bolt action iron sights rifles, shot at 300 yards.
Right.
So it's
not in use anymore. Just nostalgic.
No, not professionally in use.
Right.
Just for us old club guys.
Sure. Right.
But the fun thing is we compete with Swiss rifle and we submit our scores to the Swiss marksmanship organization.
Right.
And we actually get medals back from them.
So it must be a very accurate gun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of making fun of it, but it must be a dead on.
Yeah, Swiss K31 straight pull carbine. Our ammunition. Yeah. The ammunition is surplus Swiss military ammunition.
Okay, right.
No scopes. It's iron sights only.
The same with the revolver. That's not really, people don't use revolvers anymore, do they? With the spinning chamber, you know?
Yeah, it's historically.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, we do it for historical purposes only, just to keep it alive.
Sure, right.
But it's so much fun, and it's not just going out shooting paper targets. It's the science of going into reloading. I reload my own ammunition.
Of course. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it keeps me busy, keeps me in the garage.
Right.
It's camaraderie. Once a month we're hanging out at the range for a day and just telling stories and keeping our skills up.
Yeah. That's what it is mostly, though.
It really is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, none of us are ever going to go to the Olympics.
Right.
But we are good enough to be entertainingly competitive.
Sure.
Some of the best shooters that we have in the club, the most accurate guys, the most consistent guys, are in their 70s and 80s.
Really?
They're guys that have been shooting competitively for 60 years. And they're just so much fun to watch and so entertaining to talk to. Just a wealth of knowledge.
Right.
These guys can talk about ballistic coefficients of different sizes of bullet and the efficiency and effectiveness of different kinds of powder and just on and on and on. They can talk for days.
Right.
And no notes, I have to look in the books every time I go to reload something.
Yeah. I was raised with, we had grandpa's guns up on the mantle, the old 22 my dad got in the 30s or 40s or whatever. None of them had firing pins in them, of course.
Yeah.
You can't leave those around kids.
Yeah.
So I wasn't raised around a whole lot of guns. I've had the chance to shoot a lot out in the woods, being from Michigan and everything. But, man, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of power. It's almost too much. I get my buddies will bring some of those handguns out in the woods, like, holy cow. What in the heck? A 44. Or,
yeah.
I remember one time I was over at my uncle's house, and he's, check this out. He brought me out on the back porch, and he loaded up a muzzle loader. You ever shot one of those?
I have.
Boom!
I got a black scar here on my chin from a muzzle loader when I was a teenager.
Oh, wow, yeah.
A powder burn.
Yeah, right. A lot of interest in them. Wow.
Yeah,
cool
I really enjoy the ability to go out and, practice my marksmanship skills. Keeping military skills alive and sharp, but also just the precision and the technique and the focus. There's almost a zen to it.
Yeah.
Being able to get into a position, lock into a position, focus on the target, focus on controlling your breathing. Some guys, I don't know if there's any truth to it or not. Some guys can say they can time a shot to between their heartbeats.
Wow.
So when you're looking through the scope, if you're in a supported position, so if you got a sandbag or whatever under your hand, looking through the scope, you can see scope heartbeat through your scope.
Right.
So
especially if your adrenaline's up.
Yeah, they can time a shot between heartbeats. I haven't quite got that yet.
Completely exhaled, wait for your heart to beat and fire. Wow, That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's fun for me to be able to work on those skills and try to improve time after time as I go back to the range.
I had a buddy came back from Desert Shield, he was a sniper for the Marines, and he was telling me about some of the shots that he made. And it was like, I didn't know you could go over like 300-400 yards, 100 yards. He's telling me about shots over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Is that
I think the world record right now is 2.2 miles.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's shooting up. against the wind.
Oh yeah. At that distance, you have to account for wind, humidity.
Humidity even.
Yep, temperature, and then something called the Coriolis effect, which is the rotation of the Earth. Because at that distance, the Earth is going to move this much, so the bullet will continue on that trajectory, but the target is moved because the Earth is rotating. So you have to account for that.
Wow. How many 100 yards is in a mile? I don't even know that.
Let's see.
That's a 400 yards or?
No, it's like 1,800 yards, I think, is a mile.
Holy crap.
Maybe more than that. It's 5,280
It must have been
feet.
a hell of a load. It must have been a hell of a bullet.
Yeah.
6-7 inch bullet or something, right?
I'm only effective out to about 1,000 yards.
Okay. That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
The longest distance we compete at is 600 yards. But I have hit targets at 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Not consistently, but I have hit targets at 1,000 yards.
Right.
The gun that I would use for that, I've got an M1A, which is a variation of an M14. It's .308 caliber, and it's on a Archangel stock, and I've got a 50 power Vortex scope on it. So I can see targets at 1,000 yards. I can't necessarily always hit them at 1,000, but I can pretty consistently hit them at 600.
Wow. That's amazing. I can't even imagine. You wouldn't be able to see it without your scope.
Not clearly.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I mean, a silhouette target or even a bullseye target at 600 yards is going to look like a postage stamp.
Oh, exactly. Right. I've seen paper plates. They walk off, 100 paces, and it's like, holy cow, it's a dot.
Yeah.
Woo! I can't imagine that. That's amazing. What's your favorite gun? What are you shooting now? I know you Tanguys you were talking about are the M16?
Well, the one I use most frequently for competition is an AR-15.
AR-15,
yeah.
Okay.
It's 5.56 caliber or .223.
Yeah.
Just because it's not very heavy.
I see.
The M1A that I shoot long distance with is just way too heavy to be able to work with.
I see.
Because it's a 3-position shoot, so one position is standing unsupported. So you're trying to stand there holding a 16-pound rifle, and it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
With the AR-15, it's not as difficult. It's still difficult, but not as difficult. I enjoy the AR-15. My competition pistol is a 1911 .45 caliber.
1911 the year? No,
1911 is the model.
The model,
yeah,
okay.
It's a 1911 frame.
Right. Wow.
But
what is it again? Tell me it again. What's the caliber?
45 ACP.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. How accurate is that?
Out to 15 yards, pretty accurate.
Okay.
Out to 20, somewhat accurate, but we do 25 and 50.
Yeah, right.
At 50, it's really difficult to be accurate with a 45.
Yeah.
Just, the slightest hair of a movement translates to 6 inches at 50 yards.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it's really difficult to hit bullseyes at 50 yards.
Yeah. I was watching this.
We've got some guys that can do it, though.
Sure.
We have guys that, I don't think we have anybody that shoots with a 45 and is consistently hitting bullseyes at 50 yards, but we have a few guys in the club that, at a 500-point match, so it's 10 points per shot. A bullseye is 10 points. We will have guys out of 50 shots, 500 points, will be in the 490s.
Wow.
They're just amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
But I'm usually in the top 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling you about this. I was watching, it was a 3 of 7 project, I think is the name of the show, the YouTube. And he's an ex-Navy SEAL, and he had a marksman come in. And that was the one I said he had the alien.
Yeah.
And they were shooting at 10 yards, pacing off 10 yards, shooting again. I think they got to about 50 yards before either one of them missed. And then they got up to 60, missed, hit the second shot, walked out to 70, missed the first 2 shots, like I said, it's just the size of a dinner plate at 60, 70 feet out.
Yeah.
Paces, probably more than feet, right?
Yeah.
It's yards, I guess. Yards. So, yeah, it was like amazing how accurate that gun was. But it was the shooter, obviously. It's an amazing gun, too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to learn more about guns. You can't have it in California, so.
Yeah, that's another reason why 2 years, 3 months, and 6 days.
Yeah, right. Heading off to Texas.
Yep.
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I picked up. I was telling you a little bit about the Byrna gun.
And non-lethal.
It's non-lethal. I extended it out so it'll take 12-gram CO2 cartridges instead of just the 8s. So it's got a little more power and it'll last a lot longer. It's a little bit longer. I got aluminum shots in it instead of just the plastic ones.
Okay.
So it's like, it's still non-lethal, but it's going to put a dent in you.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So I want to get that thing out in the woods. Other than that, I'm really not comfortable having anything more than that in California.
It's difficult. The laws here change on a regular basis. You never know from one day to the next what's legal and what's not. It also changes based on what city you're in. You know,
really?
Some cities have laws that are more restrictive than what the state laws are.
Wow.
They restrict types of ammunition you can carry. They restrict areas or facilities where you're allowed to carry. If you have a state-issued concealed carry permit, it doesn't necessarily cover you in every part of the state. So it is a challenge to keep up with the state laws.
Check your local laws and wherever you're going.
Well, we've had some police officers that are associated with the clubs that have told us they can't keep up with the laws.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Because State Department of Justice and the state judiciary change the laws so frequently that nobody can keep up with them. And some of the law enforcement officers have said, I'm not even going to worry about enforcing that law because it's ridiculous.
I see, right.
So to this day, I can't tell you whether it is or is not legal to have high-capacity magazines because it has bounced back and forth so many times that at this point in time, I don't know where it stands. High capacity being anything over 10 rounds, whether it's a rifle magazine or a pistol magazine. It was outlawed for a long time, and then it was legal. So for that time when it was legal, people were buying them, and then suddenly they changed the law back and said, no, it's not legal anymore. So if you bought one, you can't have it. It changes 2 or 3 times a year, it seems like. So for the purpose of not wanting to be in violation of any law, I don't have any high-capacity magazines. I would if I could have them. I don't have any in California. My mom has some. My friends in Texas have some that I bought, but I'm not going to have them in California.
No, right. So what's the difference between a high capacity?
Anything more than 10 rounds.
Oh, I see. Just more rounds.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Somebody did say that, but I didn't quite understand what they were saying.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it would go through them faster, but it's not going to go through them any faster. It just holds a lot more.
Right.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean, if a person is well trained, it doesn't matter. If I have 5 10-round magazines, I can do a magazine change as fast as I can squeeze off 50 rounds with 5 magazine changes almost as fast as I could squeeze off 50 rounds just pulling the trigger. Because I've practiced, I've trained,
right.
I have the technique to know how to quickly drop a magazine and insert a new one and rack the slide.
Right.
So, whereas it might take me 20 seconds to shoot 50 rounds just pulling the trigger time after time,
right.
It might take me 24 seconds to shoot 50 rounds with magazine changes. So it's really irrelevant.
Right. I've thought about that many times. I'm sitting there watching you and Changiz have a conversation. It's like, there isn't anybody on the earth that's more comfortable with guns. It's like, why would you not want these guys to have guns? In case something went down in that restaurant, wouldn't you want to be strapped? I mean, I know that's kind of a touchy subject, but of all the people in the world, you guys are marksmen. You kind of spent decades with handguns and training with the best training.
Yeah.
You should be... you should have to have one on.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that an armed society is a polite society.
Yes, right. Exactly.
I subscribe to the school of thought that the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Right. How can you argue with that?
I don't know. Gun-free zones, in my opinion, do not work.
No.
The only people who abide by gun-free zones are law-abiding citizens.
Right.
And law-abiding citizens aren't the ones that are going to be shooting up a gun-free zone.
Right.
So it's a bit pointless to me.
Yeah, right. I just picked up a beautiful pistol crossbow. and it's an AR. It'll keep firing 6 in a row.
Okay.
It's just as lethal. It shoots a dart about 8 inches long. It's just beautiful. I love that thing. I've upgraded a little bit here and there, and it's like that's just as lethal as a gun.
Yeah.
You know, but it's legal.
It is legal.
Maybe I shouldn't say. We'll cut that part out so the cops don't come in my house and get my crossbow. I let you. I was going to get one next month, is what I meant.
Yeah. It's on your Christmas wish list.
Yeah, right. Ay, caramba. So you're going to head off to Texas. What you're going to keep a place here once you retire, or are you just going to hook up the RV and just head out back to Texas?
We will always have the house in California.
Good.
Yeah. But our objective is to become Texas residents. We've already bought property in Texas.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah. So as soon as possible, probably a few months before retirement, we will start setting ourselves up as Texas residents, so that when I retire, whether we go on the road or whether we move to Texas, we will be Texas residents.
Sure.
So we don't have to pay California state income tax
Oh, hey,
Unless
that's an idea.
Unless, of course, California passes that ridiculous law that they're trying to do where, regardless of where you live, if you have been a California resident in the past, they will continue to tax you. They've tried to pass that. I heard about it a year or so ago.
Oh, my God.
I don't think it's going to fly, but,
Whatever Newsom pulls out of his ass, man, I don't know. I want to talk politics with you, but you're still in the military, so we'll wait another year.
I still work for the government, so I can't really talk politics.
What do you think about? Oh, okay, we'll ask you next year.
2 years, 3 months, and 6 days. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I had a great time today.
Absolutely. Same here.
Oh, man, I sure appreciate you coming by.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
We learned a ton. Holy cow. Holy cow. All right, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Got any value? Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like. Write some in the comments. I don't know. I guess that helps the algorithms or something. Do that. All right. Love you guys. See ya.